I made the biggest mistake once. I bumped into Tarantino in New Orleans. 17 years earlier, I was at the world premiere of Pulp Fiction at the New York Film Festival, and a guy had a heart attack while the Uma Thurman, OD scene, right? And they literally had to shut the movie down.
No shit.
Get this guy rushed out.
No kidding.
So I see Tarantino, and I just go, hey, I was there at the New York Film Festival when that guy had a heart attack. And that's all we talked about and we're sitting there shooting the shit, and I'm like, no one's gonna believe me. Like I'm having he bums the smoke off me. We're sitting there shooting the shit, and I'm like, no one's gonna believe that this is. And then I made the biggest mistake. I wish I could go back in time. If I could go back in time, it wouldn't be to kill baby Hitler. I would go back in time to see me go, don't ask Tarantino for a selfie, And I went, hey, can I take a picture with you? And he's like, nah, man, you crossed the line. I'm like, it's just that no one's going to believe this. He goes, but I believe you. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you're here.
Directors and creatives have never had this much power and tools at their disposal. Were you involved in the edit? How do you eat? Writing for me also is therapy.
On this episode of Propellant, we have the hilariously opinionated filmmaker Andy Hunt. I'm your host, Matt Osterman, doer of random things. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Okay, let's go to the cliche du jour.
Yeah.
AI. I'm
yep.
sure you have some strong opinions
Yeah.
on that. You want to give us kind of your feelings towards maybe the implications as a society, but also as a filmmaking craft?
It's a fancy hammer. I mean, it's that's all it is it's a fancy hammer. I remember when I was leaving film school in the 90s, and as I was walking out of the film school with my 16 millimeter reels under my arm, because I've been cutting on a Steenbeck and a Moviola, and seeing these boxes being wheeled into my school, like literally this actually happened, that says Avid written on the side. And going, what the hell are those? And they go, oh, well, they're computers that now we can edit on computers. And me being, the purist, right, going, who the fuck is going to cut on a computer? No, you need to feel the celluloid in your fingers and all the razor blade cuts and everything. Who would want to do that? And then a year and a half later, I'm working on my first documentary where we're cutting not on an Avid, but an Avid-like system. And I'm going, oh my God, I can make boom, 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 these changes that quick. Whereas cutting film, if I want to make this change, I got to cut, hang that up, grab this, bring it in, sync up the audio. Every cut in film took 5 to 10 minutes. Every cut in on a non-linear system took seconds. So, and then you go when film went from film to digital video. And you hear all the purists go, who would want to shoot on digital video? It's film, it's 35 millimeter. And then all of a sudden you're going, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that I can look at a monitor and see exactly how the image looks rather than a grainy, shitty video tap coming from a 35 millimeter BL? Are you kidding me? So I look at AI in the same exact thing. I think everyone, I made this comment, is that nobody was bitching and complaining about AI 15 years ago when robots were making cars.
Yep.
They only started bitching about it when the robots started writing newspaper articles.
Yeah.
And then everyone now feels threatened.
Well, and going further back, the horse breeders were bitching about the cars too, right? I'm sure throughout the dawn of history, you've had these moments.
Where every single point there is like a new, which is exciting because anytime something new comes in, it forces all of us to look at what we've been doing and realize we either adapt or we die. And the great thing is, the reason we got into this business in the first place is because we're all curious. Yep. We're all trying to figure out a way of doing things. Like, even though there's the art side of filmmaking, there's also the engineering and the showmanship and the how the hell am I going to squeeze, 40 lemons out of one lemon,
Yep.
right? And so with this technology, it helps you build new things, I mean, and the thing is, when people go, well, yeah, they're going to write scripts. No, they're not, because the only other industry that I see that AI could never really take over is, a wedding planner, right? Because you're dealing with so many emotions. Mm-hmm. None of it's logistics, but it's all emotional. Yeah. Like, we are not a species that's run by fact or logic. We're run by illogical ideas, thoughts, and beliefs. Yep. A computer is not going to understand how fucked up we are, right? They might be able to do that in some ways, but they're never going to replace us. So, I always look at it as like, yeah, it can be an assistant, very much like Premiere is an assistant when I'm editing, or a lookup table or a LUT on a camera is an assistant.
Yep.
But it's never going to replace me.
Yeah. I mean, they say the AI is not going to take your job. The person that uses AI is probably going to take your job.
Yeah. And I remember when the transition went from 35 millimeter to digital video, and all of a sudden all the film loaders went, well, now what kind of job am I going to have? Well, now you're a DIT. Now your job is no longer loading film into in a tent, and you're loading the film to give to the first AC. Now you're taking cards, you're bringing it to a Mac or a laptop, and you're dumping those cards onto a hard drive. So your job is not disappearing; it's just evolving into a different shape.
I had the honor of moderating a thing with Deacons last month, I think.
Yeah.
And somebody asked a question about AI to him, and I'm like, oh, he's going to hate it. He's like, nope, it's just a tool.
Yeah.
Because he was one of the first digital proponents.
Yeah.
And he's like, AI is a tool. It's going to be great. It's going to help us do our jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if the master of the craft feels that way, maybe the rest of us should settle.
yeah.
And you taught film for numerous years, right? Yeah. Are the kids all right?
Yeah. I here's the one thing, the next generation that's coming up right now, that people like to bitch about and they bitched about us, right?
Another tale as old as time. Yeah.
And I always say, I don't know what that group is like, because the group that I dealt with were people that already knew what they wanted, and so I had 10 to 15 kids that would come in and go, I don't know exactly what I want to do in this business, but I really feel like this business is pulling me in. And so to me, that I commend at a 19 or 20-year-old to go, I think I know what I want to do with the rest of my life. And it's the most crazy path you could possibly imagine. And you're like, welcome, come into the club,
Welcome, fellow freak.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing with the generations that are coming up is that I think there's a bigger and bigger gap from the foundations of storytelling, So for example, when I started out shooting 16 millimeter film. I had a Bolex, and you had a roll of film, and that film was 3.5 minutes. And maybe you had 3 rolls of film because you could only afford 3 rolls. So now you have only 9 minutes to make a short film. Well, that 9 minutes, you can't rewind it and reshoot. You can't dump it into a computer and then reuse that film.
Choices ahead of time.
You have to make decisions. And so you have to have a point of view. And you have to, I think that's where all my prep came from, is because that, I have to rehearse the shot 5 times before we even shoot, because every time I hit roll on the camera, all you hear is money just capturing the image. And so I feel that the problem is now is because technology is so, is so easy, that the lack of point of view starts to wither away, where it's like, well, no, I got this digital camera that can shoot in the dark. So we don't need lights. We'll just run in here and we'll do a ton of shots. And then when you put it together, you realize there's no, what's the point of view of the scene? And so to me, it's the same thing of someone that goes to school for painting or sculpture. It's like, you've got to learn from the masters and understand how to capture light in a painting. And therefore that will infuse the way you work. Mm-hmm. I don't think that is as big now. It's like, we're going to teach you how to use a red. And we're going to teach you how to use an LED panel. But why are you using the red? Why are you using an LED panel? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? The non mathematical answers is not being addressed. All the technical stuff is. And I think that's one of the reasons why younger directors or directors that are in that world of technology have so much fear about working with actors. Because, I know how to make a movie look great because I can color it a certain way, or I can edit it a certain way. I know the buttons to hit on a camera to do this, this, and that. I don't know how to talk to an actor to get. I know that an actor has buttons. I've probably pressed every
they
one.
Have quite a few.
Yeah, but how do I convey to another human being what I need them to do?
Yeah. What do you think you learned from the students? Because I know often they say the teachers learn more from the students than the other way around.
I learned how to define my process. Before I taught, I knew how I worked, but I never analyzed it. And now I'm in front of 15 people, and now I got to tell them how I look at how I structure something. And so that allowed me to then go, oh, yeah, this is how I work. And the best part about it is it keeps me honest. So every project that I would work on with my students, I would have to do just as much homework or more than they did, so that they would have to see, leading by example, that, like everything that I'm doing is designed and prepped. So it's not, I had a student once that he was doing a shoot and everyone's showing up. And I look at the student, I'm like, okay, so where's your shot list? And he goes, it's all up here. And I went, oh, this is going to be fun, And I just sat back, and I love this kid. I love all the kids. They're great. But I sat back and was enjoying the train wreck, right? And 19 people were swarming around this kid asking questions, and it was just like deer in headlights. He didn't know how to answer. And then at the end of the shoot, everyone leaves and he is limping, right? Because he just got the shit kicked out of him. I pulled him aside and went, how's that shot list doing? And he's like, yeah, I know. And it was probably the best experience for that kid to ever have, because the next time he makes a movie, the worst scenario, and he's like, I can't have that ever happen to me again, where people go, well, because the worst feeling I think anyone has is if someone's looking at them like they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. And that imposter syndrome is huge for a director on a set, where you're like, I know what I'm doing, but I'm trying to keep everything in my head, and it's really hard. And so it's taught me how to, how to work and how to structure things, and then apply that, and then say, this is how I work. I don't know if you want to work this way or not. I'm not forcing anybody to do it a certain way. But what I do force everybody is to have intention. Yeah. Is like to know why you're doing. Don't tell me you're doing this thing because it's cool. Because if that's your intention, it has no guts and heart to it. It's eye candy, and and we don't want to do eye candy. Like, we want to make movies.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit. Yeah. It's the first time we've had a reality TV star in this seat.
I don't know if it's a star, but
I mean, you had your time on screen. Tell us about that experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, God, it was 2007. It's like 14 years ago. We had a 10-year reunion where we all looked at each other and was like, what the hell? Like, it's like flown by.
It was called On the Lot.
It was called On the Lot. Yeah, so it was basically a show designed by Spielberg and Mark Burnett, and they wanted to take the model of like American Idol, and instead of it being singers, it's filmmakers. I found out later on it was like the most expensive reality show ever made. I mean, of course, Spielberg, right? Yeah. So it's basically because not only is there a reality crew following each director as they're making the movie, that's a reality crew, one. You've got the actual crew that is about 30 to 40 people that are making the short films, that's two. And then you've got the live situation where, very much like American Idol, you get up on a stage, you stand there, and they show your movie to America, and then America votes. So that's three. The individual making movies, like, they would have 5 filmmakers competing at a time. So from a logistical standpoint, if I have a 30-person crew making my little 2.5-minute short, there's 4 other crews that are working that same weekend. So there's 150 crew members working just on 5 shorts, and so it was it was amazing, because it was this experience where you were coming in just as a director and sometimes a writer if you wanted to write.
It was competitive. You had to submit something, right?
Yeah. So like I myself and my co-directing partner and we submitted this one short that got their attention, and then they wanted to see if I could make a short in like 5 days, and out of nowhere. We had just finished, I think we were like walking out of one of the Fearless Filmmakers screenings, and I get this call from LA, and they're like, you got 5 days to make a movie. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, go. And they hung up, and I'm standing in a parking lot, and I'm like looking at, thankfully most of the crew that made the short with me was there at the screening, and I'm like, we have to shoot this weekend. I don't know what we're shooting yet. And we wrote the story about this janitor who is not appreciated and things to that degree. We finish the movie, we get it done in 5 days, we ship it off to LA. And in that process, Jimmy Kimmel had this short film show that he was developing, and they had found the short that initially got the On the Lot people's attention. Hopefully this is making sense. And they wanted to use it. So I remember calling up Mark Burnett Productions and basically saying, hey, you know, I'm Andrew Hunt. You guys called me up. You wanted me to do this little movie. I'm wondering the movie that I did before, just the sample, if you guys are going to use it on your show, because if not, Jimmy Kimmel might want it. And then an hour later, the head casting director called me back and said, no, go ahead. They can totally use that short. And you hear that and you just go, oh, shit, I'm not on this show. And then she goes, but we're not talking about the janitor movie, right? And I'm like, oh no, the janitor movie is totally yours. She goes, yeah, because all I can say is, and it was like, and I'm working at a home shopping network, right? And I'm sharing an office with my partner, one of my buddies, and you know, my producing partner on the home shopping thing. And she goes, well, everyone in Mark Burnett saw the janitor movie and they love it. They think it's great. I'm like, oh, great. Well, thanks. She goes, and we sent the movie over to DreamWorks. And all the executives over at DreamWorks watched it and they loved it too. And in the back of my head, you're thinking, there's no way.
Right.
You know, there's no way that one executive that I'm thinking of watched my short. And she goes, and just to let you know, there's one executive over at DreamWorks that really wanted to know how you did this sequence with all these people are sliding across the floor, because he's a director too. And he was really curious how you did this. And in the back of my head, I'm going, no way.
Can't
no
be.
way.
Not him.
And then she goes, the other note that he brought up with he goes, that you made him care about a janitor in 20 seconds, the first 20 seconds of the movie. And he goes, and the fact that you sucked him in the first 20 seconds, he fell in love with it. And as soon as she said that, that's because I've heard every interview with Spielberg. And I went, and then she's like, okay, great. So we'll tell you if you get on the show or not. Okay, bye. And hang up. And I'm standing there like shaking, because I'm like, you know, the guy that inspired me, you know, that terrified me when I saw Jaws, that blew me away on Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, Close Encounters, E.T., everything. I have just got this quasi confirmation that this guy knows that I exist. Mm-hmm. And then when they delivered all the shorts and they said, okay, out of the 200 filmmakers, they gave it to Spielberg and they said, pick the 50. And Spielberg picked me. And I was one of the 50 that went out there and competed. And so it's just, the whole thing is surreal. I got to make movies without worrying about the budget. I got to just be a director, which is bizarre. You know, in this town, you're doing 19 jobs, but to direct.
Yep.
And, you know, I joked with craft services that I could dump a bag of M&Ms into a bowl just so I could say that I did a second job besides directing, you know. And so, but I tell you sorry, I'm rambling here, but the one thing that, there was such validation because, you know, you're coming from Pittsburgh, you want to be a filmmaker. That's very bizarre. You come to Minnesota, the film community is a little bit bigger. There's more opportunities for commercials and music videos, things like that. And you feel like you got a shot. It's when you're facing a crew of 65 people that just got done doing Kiefer Sutherland's 24, and you are running it. And you are a kid in a candy store, and you at the end of the first short that I did in LA, like I bawled. I was crying like a kid because I can't believe, like, I didn't think about, I was afraid of like, oh my God, I've been working in Minnesota. What's LA going to be like? And I mean, well, that fear was when I was on the plane going to LA. But then when you were there, you're like, all that anxiety and fear went away because we were all 12-year-old kids playing in a sandbox. And then at the end of the day, you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you just directed a movie with an LA crew, and they're patting you on the back going, dude, you belong here. And you hear that and you can't help but just, and these are strangers. It's one thing when mom and dad say you're really talented, or your friends saying you're really talented. It's somebody complimenting you that doesn't have to.
They don't have to.
That's gold, you know, because then that just, you know, it just gives you the fuel to like, okay, I'm on the right track.
Yeah. Was it extra difficult with cameras pointed at you?
A little bit, but it's kind of like, I heard a National Geographic photographer once talk about, he was filming a bird in a tree, and he said, you know, I spent 2 weeks in the tree, and the first week was me being in the tree, not even rolling the camera, so the bird get used to me. And then finally the bird, like on day 8, went, fuck it, I'm just going to shit and eat in front of you. Is that all right? You know? And so, so I remember the first challenge was we had to pitch a feature-length film. They gave you a log line, and they're like, okay, you've got 24, it was like 7:00 at night. Here's your log line. You've got till 9:00 in the morning to pitch us a full feature film. Thankfully, the Biltmore Hotel had like this outdoor patio because, sadly I smoke on the side because it's really hard for me to write and not pace. So it's now 2:00 and everybody's in different parts of the hotel, like on the steps, writing ideas. And I'm just outside pacing in a circle like a caged tiger. And it's like my feet and my brain need to be working at the same time. And I remember it's like 3:00 in the morning. Most of the other filmmakers they're exhausted and they're in bed. And it's just me pacing. And I'm just mumbling to myself, like, because I like driving at night because no one can see me talking to myself. That's why, like, if I do pitch to myself as I'm driving now, I put my earbuds in so people think I'm having a phone conversation. So I'm not so, concerned about it now.
Yeah.
But I'm out there pacing and I'm talking to myself and I'm talking out the beats because, and again, talking about the confidence of pitching something. I need to be 100% confident on this. And all of a sudden, a couple cameras come out and all of a sudden I shut up. And I'm just mumbling to myself and walking around because I don't want to look crazy. And then a couple more cameras. So what I realized was that every other filmmaker went to bed. And it's just me pacing in this, like, this portico or this, like... And finally, I was getting frustrated because I couldn't get into it because I couldn't talk out loud. And then I was like, fuck it, And then I just started pitching to myself. And as soon as I did that... all the lights on the cameras, because what I'd realized is that none of them were filming. They were all just like, that camera guy in the tree going, if I wait here long enough, this bird's he's gonna perform for me. And as soon as I just started talking, I just felt this whole wash of light just kind of like hit me where it was like, cameramen were like, much longer are you going to be pacing? Dude, another hour. Okay, because we're going to be over here because Bob's going to get a top shot of you, and so, you're a filmmaker, you're understanding what they need.
They're storytellers too.
Exactly. So it's like, it was this mutual respect. Like, it was kind of like the coyote and the sheepdog, they punch in because there would be times where you didn't want them to film what you were doing.
Yep.
But
you knew,
it was like, you caught me. Okay, here we are.
Right.
I'm not conscious enough to know, like, okay, bring it down, be serious, be this. No, I'm 12 years old.
Making movies.
All the accolades after the movie is done. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I mean,
process.
You have to do it because that's the job. But, I get to spend, years in a dark room in front of a laptop writing. Then I go from a very solitary experience to now leading a group of 30, 40, 50 people on a set for 4 weeks. Then I'm back in a dark room, but now I'm not alone. I'm with an editor, and now we're it's a duo rather than a solo gig. And then I'm playing with sound designers, and I'm playing with composers and colorists, and then finally I'm in another dark room. But now I'm surrounded by all the back of the heads, and they're all looking at the screen of what we've been working on for 2 years,
Yep.
And so it's, and to not be able to enjoy every single part of that, to me, I don't know. That's why I think I love directing so much, is because I do enjoy all the aspects.
Yeah.
There's not one where I go, except for maybe raising money. But I mean... But the experience of it, it's like I enjoy the change up.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, you're exactly right. 2 or 3 years of work, and you get one night of a premiere, maybe the day your movie comes out.
Yeah, and that's it. Well, it's funny because I know that you have a very logical mindset as well. And maybe I don't mean to put too much of that on you, but I mean science. I know that it's very science oriented. And you look at the equation. I'm spending probably 2 to 3 to 4 to 5,000 hours on a 2-hour project, right? So if you just look at the amount of time spent.
Distilled into...
Exactly, right? So if you look at that, the 5,000 hours to make 2 hours does sound a little like depressing. But then you look at the 2 hours, and that every person that sees that 2 hours, and maybe it's 500,000, that 2 hours now becomes $1 million.
Yep.
Or, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's like this investment in time. You know, it's like I'm investing 5,000 hours of my time to create this 2-hour thing. This 2-hour thing will then be seen, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 times or whatever. That will now be so much bigger than the initial investment that I put in. So I know it sounds crazy, but it's like, that's how I look at like this investment of time of like, you know, like a musician that will spend 6 months on one track, just getting that 3.5 minute song just dialed in, and you go, oh, I get that.
But they might get 100 million listens on it, right?
Totally.
Like film and music, probably, and TV are the most scalable forms of art there is, right? Like theater and stage, it's ephemeral, but you're going to get a couple hundred people in there.
It lives and dies.
Yep.
And even if you try to capture it on video, it's like filming a basketball game. You know what I mean? You're not in it. You're always a spectator. You're never, or you're always you're always a spectator. You're just like watching it, you know?
Yeah.
And you're not involved.
Do you ever get excited about doing something ephemeral like that doesn't get to exist after the fact? Or are you like, what's the point?
Well, I used to do stand-up comedy when I was in New York, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. So there's that. But I think I'm too selfish to go, oh, I just want this thing to live once and then it goes away.
All that work.
Yeah.
I know.
I want documents, man. Like for me, you know, when it's funny, my cinematographer, Sarah, like when we're working, like she's constantly taking pictures on her phone. And if you opened up my phone and saw how many pictures I took for Infernal, most of them was like, no, I want this coffee cup. I don't like, they were not like, because to me, the home movie is the movie.
Yep.
I made the biggest mistake once. I bumped into Tarantino in New Orleans, and like he bummed the smoke off me, and we're out in front of like, and we're just having a cigarette because 17 years earlier, I was at the world premiere of Pulp Fiction at the New York Film Festival, and a guy had a heart attack while the Uma Thurman, OD scene, right? And they literally had to shut the movie down.
No shit.
Get this guy rushed out.
No kidding.
So I see Tarantino, and I just go, hey, I was there at the New York Film Festival when that guy had a heart attack. And that's all we talked about for like, and we're sitting there shooting the shit, and I'm like, no one's gonna believe me. Like I'm having like, he bums the smoke off me, we're sitting there shooting the shit, and I'm like, no one's gonna believe that this is, and then I made the biggest mistake. I wish I could go back in time. If I could go back in time, it wouldn't be to kill baby Hitler. I would go back in time to see me go, don't ask Tarantino for a selfie, you know? And I went, hey, can I take a picture with you? And he's like, nah, man, you crossed the line. I'm like, it's just that no one's going to believe this. He goes, but I believe you. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you're here. But yeah, what I love to do is I love to take pictures of some of the crew with the actor. Like my assistant Penn, came to Portugal with me, and Penn's sitting on the couch next to Guy, and they're just shooting the shit, having a conversation. And I'm like, Penn, let me grab your phone. Guy, is it cool? And Guy's like, absolutely. And we take a picture. For Emily, my partner, it's a quick story, but so Emily works over at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, and I wanted her to come over because while I was writing the script, her and I were constantly talking about it and developing it. And so she really helped me flesh it out, but I wanted her there because she's an amazing artist. And so she went up to one of the people in HR and said, hey, I've got all this vacation time saved up that I want to take it all at the same time because my partner is making a movie in Portugal. And the woman went, oh, is there anybody that I know that's in it? And Emily goes, well, Guy Pearce. And the woman went, oh my God, Guy Pearce. And the woman just was like totally fond.
The Proposition's my favorite movie.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah. It's so we're finishing up the last day of shooting, and Guy and I like just getting along like a house on fire. And I walk over to him. I'm like, and Guy had been working with Emily, and Emily is such an artist that Guy just immediately was like drawn to her because that's the people you could tell that he's surrounded by in his personal life. And I asked him, I said, look, man, can I ask you for a celebrity favor? And he was like, yeah, what's that? I'm like, so Emily's boss gave her the entire month and a half to come here and make this movie with us. Is there any way I could get you on camera with my phone saying this woman's, because I know that if this, not just a photograph, but if this woman got a video message from you saying thank you, Guy's like, absolutely. So there's this video of like Emily, and Guy's got his arm around Emily, and Guy's going, Patrice, thank you so much for letting Emily come out here and all this. And, and then sending that to her, the joke was like, I looked at Emily, I'm like, you'll probably be able to get any time off ever, for the rest of your life.
Smart.
But the other thing is that, my experience with celebrities, I get that with working with them.
Yeah.
I love to see that experience with people around where it's, Guy taking a picture with him and Penn or whatever, because there's this, it's really selfish. It's just calling it out. But because of what you've created, all these people get to rub elbows with some of their heroes.
Because of you.
Yeah. And even though you don't want to say that out loud because that sounds so egotistical, but it's the truth, right?
Yep.
So to me, that's the great thing about like sharing those moments with other people,
Yeah, I mean, you're the granddaddy.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. And your selfie is the movie.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't need to tell you that I know Guy.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, your name and Guy Pearce is in the same opening credits? Yeah, okay, clearly you guys know each other.
Right. Yeah, and Patrice was her name?
Patrice.
Yeah. And that probably made her month, too.
Yeah, and it was great because, when we had that one screening, I invited her because anybody that helps you make the movie, and you're just like, because everybody's so important. And I think a lot of people sometimes think, well, if I'm not the actor, or if I'm not camera, or if I'm not this, I'm not that important. You're like, no, you don't understand. You brought the cinnamon rolls to the day when everyone was in a shitty mood, and all of a sudden there were cinnamon rolls. And like what people don't realize is that there are so many heroes on a film set that just make anybody that makes your life just a little bit easier on a film set is a goddamn god to you when you're in the shit doing it, right? So to always make sure that you appreciate what they do, it's like I said, I find the best way of respecting people's helping is calling out that they helped.
Yep.
And if I can do one little step more than I should, or that to let them know how important they are, that just validates to them. They're like, oh, this was very important. Letting Emily come, me proving Emily's vacation to work with you in Portugal, it was absolutely crucial. Like I couldn't make the movie without Emily.
Yeah. How did Infernal Machine come together?
It came together great. I mean, the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge I think on the film was the fact that when we got there, I can talk about this now because the movie came out, and we initially had one producer attached to the project that had let us know that he had all the financing. Mm-hmm. So we get there, we realize we don't have any of the financing. So my producer is working, like the lead producer, Lionel Hicks, and his brother Julian, and Spencer McLaren in Australia are like working like crazy to build the track because we're already on the train and we're going, So that was the most stressful moment. Like making the film, the Portuguese crew was amazing. You have headbutts with different departments and this and that, but overall, I was just. It was funny because I remember coming back like a week after I came back and I bumped into you because we were watching that screening.
Yep.
And I was still in a daze. I didn't know where the hell I was. And
we talked about that afterwards because we talked about you. We're like, he's still like in the trench.
Yeah,
right
I'm
now.
still in the trench. Yep. And, and I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. And we're in post-production and it's cutting well. We're not having any issues. There's no triage. We knew that we had to do some pickup shots and things to that nature, but there was nothing like what I would say every day when I would get in the car and drive away from set was, did I compromise the integrity of the movie? Now, did I have to change things because the storyboards are doing this? Absolutely.
Compromise all over the place.
Exactly. But did I compromise the integrity? And the answer was always no. But shooting it, editing it, the whole thing, putting it together, like, I know Ron Howard has made this comment that no matter what movie you make, at one point, eventually it's going to break your heart. And for me, the heartbreaking was when I got hit by some critics. But the entire process up to that point was like, I got to make my movie the way that I wanted to make it. I got to work with a studio that allowed me to make my movie. Like the meetings that I would have with Paramount on the changes was never like even when I delivered the first cut of the film, in my contract, it said director's cut. And I was telling the handlers that were the in-betweens between me and Paramount, I'm like, can we not call this the director's cut? Because I feel that when I hear the word director's cut, there's a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And there's like, oh, you can't touch any of this because I'm the artist.
It's my vision.
Exactly. And I was like, can we, I know there's some issues with the project. So, and I'm not one of these people that think that executives are idiots.
Yeah.
You know, they are in that position for a reason. Now, maybe they make some bad calls. We all make bad calls. So I'm not going to judge them on the bad calls. I'm going to judge them on, you know, the movie that came in that the cut wasn't very good, but by us doing this, this, and this, it made it a great film. And they have witnessed more they've witnessed more rough cuts than anybody.
Yep.
So for me not to listen to their input, and because they have seen so many more problems than I'll hopefully ever face, that was the relationship. So when it was there, what do you guys think? I already had a couple people watch the movie. I've got notes. And the notes that they had were exactly the same notes I was getting from other folks. And I'm like, great. So we're all in agreement. This is what needs to change. And it was like, oh, you know, and so my entire experience with the studio system was great, you know? And, so yeah, I mean, the only thing I wasn't expecting is because I loved it so much. I loved making it. I loved writing it. I loved a whole crew, everybody, that as soon as it came out, it immediately, there was two different audiences. There was, you know, if you go to there's like, I've got just as many 5 stars as I have 1 star. And I wasn't expecting that. Mm-hmm. And that was just a gut punch to the soul, you know? And one of my students jokes about it and goes, Andy, you tried to make a movie and you fucked up and you made art, you know? You know, because,
that's great.
Well, yeah. And, you know, and that to me was the heartbreak. You know, and it took me a good couple months just to, you know, going back to failure. There's part of you, it's like, oh my God, I failed. No, you didn't fail. There's some people that just don't like your movie, you know, and that's all right, you know, and they're not idiots and they're not this, and you can't talk shit about them. It's the same when I did stand-up comedy and I tell a joke and the audience doesn't laugh. Well, it's not the audience's problem. It's my problem. My joke didn't land on those particular people.
One of my favorite things is a well-written bad review.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I know what's wrong with my movie, and you just clearly articulated it better than I could.
Yeah.
But I already knew that.
Yeah.
So thank you for articulating, you know, all the issues with it. It's when the reviewer didn't give it a chance, or they didn't. You could tell they're distracted, or they didn't get it at all, which is fine and it happens.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when you're like, okay, come on. Like,
well, yeah. I mean, it's funny because I literally sent an email out to every bad critic, and I thanked them. Mm-hmm. And some of them responded back of like, okay, what's the joke? Right. And I'm like, well, there is no joke. Yeah. You called out some really critical things in the film, and I'm taking note. And not that, you know, and, you know, I might disagree with you on this, and this. Mm-hmm. But I in no way, shape, or form am going to tell you that you're wrong. Mm-hmm. You know, that's your opinion and that's your belief. And I can't challenge that, you know? And so, yeah, it was the one thing I felt that I was prepared for everything before making Infernal. And everything that I was making during Infernal was clicking at a good pace. I wasn't expecting, like, you know, getting hit with some bad reviews. Yeah. And, you know, and it really humbled me and really made me realize, you know, it made me realize that, okay, you know, it made you then question, why are you making movies? Are you making movies for that guy here? Mm-hmm. Or are you making movies for you? Well, mm-hmm. I'm making movies for me. Well, then why is that guy's comment such a, why? Because all these other people really liked it, but you're not thinking about those other people. You're just thinking about that guy's comment. Why are you thinking about that guy's comment? Well, because I want to be liked. Okay, well, you want to be liked. Yeah. So it came to this kind of revelation, like, how do you want people to see your movie, or do you want to share your movie with people? And if you want to share your movie with people, then it's like, this is my idea. You might not agree with my idea. You might not like my idea, but this is my idea, right? That's different than I want you to see my movie, because seeing it, I want you to like it, and I want you to like me, you know? And you know, and again, that's something that you do a deep dive on your own psyche, on your own ego, and realize, you know, what are you doing this for? Yep. And sometimes it gets a little murky and it needs a little clarity. And so as much as I would like to say, you know, I'm glad for it, you know, but again, it's something that you know, while you're in this entire process, you're constantly learning how you work.
Yep.
And again, you don't know who you are unless you have a terrible day.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's, so I hope I'm not rambling on much
No,
about this, but
no.
I mean, you know.
But if you were to tell 12-year-old Andy that you're going to have a feature film with movie stars that Variety is going to review and have a few nice things to say about it, you're like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
No, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, it's the same thing of like, you know, you get on a reality show and you make top 6, but you didn't get number 1. There's only one person that's making number 1. And, you know, you get cut, and then there's a camera on you asking you, so what's it like to be rejected? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I got to make movies all summer. This is fucking awesome,
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm bummed about is that I'm not making any more movies. But, you know, to feel rejected or feel like a failure, I don't feel like that at all, you know? But yeah, so it is, you know, and it's such a terrifying thing of putting yourself out there, you know, for everyone to see. But that is what separates us from most people, you know, and that, you know, and you've got to be, I hate saying the word brave because there's nothing brave about it. It's not like I'm going to war or crossing no man's land with a rifle. But it's, you know, it's taking your idea and putting it out there for the world to go.
Masochistic.
Exactly. Some people are going, I like this. Some people are like, I hate it. Some people are going, oh, it's a copy. And so but that's in order to keep working. That's what you got to do, you know?
Any visions for the future of our craft?
I tell you, the one thing that I think is that I'm noticing is like the A24 approach, and not just that studio, but just that there is something where the storytelling is starting to get more open-ended. And is getting embraced that way. And not that that never happened before, but that only happened with a few filmmakers, right? Like the Coen brothers, like No Country for Old Men. You know, there's some people that love that ending and some people that hate it, you know. And you're starting to find, and you're even starting to see it in television series as well, you know. And, you know, like True Detective, when that came out, you know, and I just actually watched season 4, and you're like, okay, what are you you're walking away with your own interpretation. Or I just watched Eric, the show on Netflix with Cumberbatch.
Yep.
And endings are not like open and shut. Now they're interpretive. And I think that, you know, I think we're maturing more as an audience on how we're accepting movies and how we're taking in, you know, films. And I think that's what's really interesting, you know, is to see a film and not just the ending, but like, what is the movie really about? And then you're putting in these different things where the audience is going, how does that fit? You know, and yet there's no payoff to that, but it just showed up.
Yep.
And I'm not describing it well, but there is something where we're allowing the audience to be a little bit more imaginative and a little bit more interpreting what we're seeing, rather than it's this, and this.
Yeah.
It's no longer feeling like an NSA or an NCIS episode of like, we're going to wrap it all up and put a bow on it at the end. It's like, we're going to give you a couple things that you can walk away with. And to me, those are the things that I'm seeing more and more, that people are taking more chances with, rather than a buttoned up ending.
Do you think maybe that could be a reaction to our always on digital lives where like we don't have room for imagination anymore because we're just consuming, you know? Like
it could be. I mean, every single form of media, whether it's books, TV, podcast, TikTok, whatever, they're all fighting for your attention. And so it's like, how do you keep somebody thinking about your thing after the fact? You know, it would always be the thing when I would do commercials and you'd sit with a client and let's say you're doing a commercial for Becker Furniture World and they make a comment and they say, well, we want our furniture commercials to be better than home furniture. And I'm like, no, you can't think of it that way.
Yeah.
Your commercial has to be better than all of them. Because in a 1 hour block, there are 4 commercial breaks? And in those 4 commercial breaks, there's going to be 4 to 5 commercials per break. So now we're looking at about 25 commercials, Half of those are going to be national, which means maybe it's a movie that's coming out, Return of the Jedi or Star Wars or whatever. Pepsi, Coke, millions and millions of dollars being spent on commercials. That's who you're competing against.
Yeah.
Because at the end of that hour, if you turn to that person and go, hey, what commercial do you remember? You know, they're going to say, oh, the Pepsi ad was great. They're not going to go, well, out of the furniture commercials, I really like the, so,
Yeah.
so the thing is that I think, it's forcing us, which is good, we got to come up with some cooler shit.
Yeah.
And I remember I once had a conversation with Mark Burnett while I was on the show, and we were just sitting there on a couch talking behind the wings and everything, and he made a comment about, people in television blame me because I brought in Survivor, and then all these other reality shows showed up, and then there was less scripted television shows because reality shows were cheaper to produce, and blah, blah, blah. And the answer that I gave to him wasn't blowing smoke up his ass. I just said, no, now scripted shows have to be better.
Yeah. Right.
Like they have to go, look, this scripted show is going to cost twice that a reality show is, but because it's so different, unique, and this and that, that's what makes it stand out.
The Darwinism of ideas again.
It's the one thing that drives me nuts when I talk to independent filmmakers, especially when they give me a script where I've seen it before. If you are a nobody director, and I'm not slamming it, you're no name, right? Your lead in your film is your script. Guy Pearce read Infernal and went, this is a really cool take. I want to play this part because this is different, And that's the thing that I think every creative and writer, and there's the challenge of doing it different, but for difference sake, which you want to avoid, because now you're going into the world of, I want it to be cool.
Now you're try hard.
Yeah. But you as yourself, you are your own person. There's nobody else like you. So you telling a bank heist movie, like if you and I were to write bank heist movies, they're going to be so different. Even if you and I were given the same script, It's going to be completely different. And, but it's the uniqueness which allows you to stand out from the rest. And so anytime that I'm talking to somebody and they make a comment to me of like, oh, I have 2 drafts of the script. And I'm like, oh, you're not going to find what it really is about until like draft 7. Like really, if you pierce through it and find it. And it's got to be different, because if it's not, then it's noise.
Yeah.
And an actor is going to read this and go, yep, saw that before. Yeah, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, taking that further, what's your take on the current industry? We're kind of in a weird spot right now, but I know you're actively out there trying to get stuff made.
Yeah. I mean, going to that exact thing, it's like, I got a zombie movie that I've got to take on zombies that hasn't been done yet.
Based on Frostbite or a different one?
No, it's based on a script. Actually, the funny thing is Frostbite is based off of it. It's called Dead Men.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, and it's a different take on the zombie genre. Now, I'm not freaking out because people are going, oh, Andy, they've done so many zombie movies. I'm like, no, this one's different. And the beautiful thing about it is that I am letting all the other movies that exist, they support my movie, right? So I don't need to show you the zombie apocalypse because Romero did it. Zack Snyder did it. One zombie walks, the other zombie runs. There's a million different zombie movies, So I want to do something different with the genre. I think the interesting thing you're seeing right now is that we're no longer beholden to genres, which I think is incredibly freeing for us as writers, because now our movies, like I always use this as an example when it's the beholden to genre, Jaws. What kind of movie is it? Because you can go up to one person and go, what's Jaws? And they go, well, it's a thriller. You go up to the next person and go, it's a horror movie. It's a monster movie. Yeah, but it's also a movie about a cop who wants to actually change things because the city that he came from, New York City, he didn't feel like one man could make a difference. It's also about survivor's guilt, a guy who the rest of his crew in Indianapolis were eaten by sharks, and here he was alive, and why me? And therefore this guilt, I have to exterminate every fucking shark I can see. There's another guy going, no, we need to save these things. And then you've got corporate guilt. Agreed. No, we got to open the beaches. It's 4th of July.
A shitty mayor.
Mayor, right? So if you think about it, you look at Jaws, and granted, this is a movie almost 40, 50 years ago, but you look at Jaws and you're like, this is a movie that transcended genre. that we weren't beholden to anything. We allowed the story to be its own story without us putting shackles on it and going, oh no, you're a monster movie, so you have to do this. And I think because of the amount of stories that are being told and retold, and everyone's trying to find a different angle, it's now allowing us to break the shackles of going, oh, a horror film can be incredibly moving. The Last of Us can be this, like, I'm crying while I'm playing a video game.
Yep.
You know, that's unheard of. You know, so by tearing down the genre walls and allowing a story to like slither through and just be its own thing, I think that's what's interesting. And I think you're going to see that more and more. I hope so, because I think anytime you see a movie that's trying to be formulaic,
Yeah.
that maybe this movie would have been great in the 90s, and it would have been great. Like, would Lethal Weapon be the movie it is now? If they made Lethal Weapon now, would it be as powerful as it was when it first came out? You know, I don't think so.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think genre, I mean, humans don't live in genres, right?
No.
Right? We have stories that pull from everything, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of horror. But yeah, genre's there to kind of get people's attention, right?
Yeah.
But you have to deliver an experience beyond that.
And I think that being more specific and being more authentic is going to only, I think, grab a bigger audience.
As a filmmaker, any tips or habits that have contributed to your success?
I think the biggest one is knowing, like, trying to figure out what the story is about. And my students, I would drive them crazy because they would come in during the screenwriting class and I go, okay, what's your movie about? And they're like, well, these bank robbers, and they rob this bank, and then they get in the bank, a car, and they take off, and one of them happens to be a cop. And you're like, okay, that's the plot. What's the movie about? And then they don't think I heard them. They're like, well, it's about these bank robbers. They're robbing this bank. I'm like, no, that's the plot. What's the movie about? Like, there's one character, there's one protagonist in the film, potentially. What's their problem? You know, and you might not know what their problem is until you're in draft 2, you know, or draft 3, or even draft 4. As soon as you know what their problem is, and you go, okay, it's a fear of failure. It's a fear of being found out you're a fraud. It's a fear of this. It's all. I find this easier to find a character's fear than a character's desire, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, in Infernal, I had the perfect character because I had a character that was a fear of being found out, that he was a fraud, and then desired that he could confess, you know? So I'm like, that's just perfect. And you have that core, and as long as you have that core, then every answer is easy. You know, when somebody comes up and goes, should he wear this shirt or that shirt? Well, he's trying to impress DeKent, so he's going to wear the shirt with the more Western-y floral things on it, right? And that to me is like, that's why I think, you know this, you're on set, a million questions come at you, and you need to answer them like in, you know, quickly. And the worst thing in the world is going, can you give me 5 minutes? Let me think about it, right? And you walk away. Uh-huh. If you know your character's core, it's, to me, I find it very easy. Yeah. Like, oh, you know, like I remember when we were shooting Infernal, and there was one day we were shooting this really narrow alleyway, and Guy shows up and he sees the alleyway, and Guy, you know, again, I'm not patting myself in the back, but I love when actors say this shit to me. He's like, man, these locations that you're picking, these are great. How are you making these decisions? I'm curious. And I went, I looked at 5 alleys, and I asked myself, which is the one alley that the character Bruce Cogburn would hate to be in? Mm-hmm. And this is the one. Mm-hmm. And I went, because it's more narrow, it's more claustrophobic. He would hate this alleyway. Therefore, that's the alley. I want to torture my protagonist. That's the job. Usually most movies is not on the best day of their life. It's the worst day of their life that then reveals something about who they are. So they're thankful that they had this terrible moment that happened to them at the beginning of the film. And so
what you didn't tell them was really there's a coffee shop around the corner that you really appreciated. You just had to invent a narrative.
Ironically, there was one that we walked in with, this is perfect. And the woman went, no. And I'm like, God damn it. Because the coffee was really good. But I think the thing is like, know what your film is about. And know that, you know, because I find that if you know what it's about, it's so much easier to branch off on that.
Taking that question further to more of the creative human level, any tips or tricks or tools that you use?
Actually, yes. and I've told the story so many times that I know I elaborate on everything. But I mean, I heard once this speech about this National Geographic guy who was out in the Antarctic with sled dogs, and as he was setting up camp, he noticed 100 yards away there was a polar bear like hunting them. And the guy set up his camera, and he had a gun, so he was protected. But he started taking pictures of the polar bear getting closer and closer and closer. And one of the sled dogs, rather than barking aggressively, started barking playfully. And the end of the slideshow with this polar bear and this dog is the polar bear's on its back, the dog's on its chest, and they're licking each other's faces. And it made the photographer realize that if I can work in a state of play, I can change anybody's opinions about anything. Like, and yes, it is manipulative, and I say that because, and then this guy talked about how he hated negotiating contracts, and he came in, and rather than being really intense and stressful, he's like, yeah, okay, so I don't agree with this and I don't agree with that. So if we could change, he's like, everybody in the room was very stressful as well. But as soon as he came in playful, everybody just started to get playful as well.
Loosen up.
And just, and so, I mean, when I was in my car coming to this podcast, I'm in a different mode than I am right now, right? I know that I got to be in playful mode. And when I'm directing, I got to be in playful mode. And so my thing with interacting with people is, is being able to call out first that you fucked up. So to walk in and go, I don't know how we're going to do this. I just made this shit up, or what I think a crew loves to hear is you set up a shot, the first take, you go cut, and you go, Jesus, I got to stop doing peyote. We should have never shot this way. We should have changed. If I announce that I made a mistake and I'm the director, most directors don't do that. So I know the crew's going, did he just call out his own shit? Yeah. Oh, okay, this is nice.
Being vulnerable works.
Yeah, let's do it, And so I find that and it's hard because if you're an introvert, it's very hard to, but that's part of the job as directing, is to just have that playful spirit, because I think having that playfulness, again, it's the best job in the world. Mm-hmm. So why shouldn't we be acting like 12-year-olds? Well, somewhat 12-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And that becomes infectious. Because, I mean, one joke was with my producer made to me on Infernal is, he goes, you'll never get the sparks. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, look, chap, he's a Brit. He's like, look, the art department's going to love you. Costumes are going to love you. Everyone, but the grips and the gaffers, the G&E will never, and they call them the sparks. Sparks will never. So the second day on the shoot, I show up to the trailer where all the G&E is, and I'm standing there, and they're all working, and they're talking in Portuguese, and they all stop and look over, and they see dipshit me standing there at the, the trailer, and I'm like, my producers say that you and I aren't going to be friends, and then they're interpreting. One guy can speak really good English, and he's interpreting, and they're all kind of laughing, and I'm like, I think at the end of this, this shoot, we're going to be friends. And the tallest of we felt that height was who's the leader, with the grips. Ricardo, which is really his name's Ricardo, but he told me it was Ricardo because the other name that he said I couldn't pronounce. And he goes,
too many vowels.
Yeah, it's not Spanish at all. It's Portuguese. And he said, well, we'll see. And and it was very playful and fun. And when we had a situation where the crew wasn't getting paid for a week and a half, and there was a talk on that crew leaving, right? And I'm standing there devastated because we just finished on a Tuesday. I don't know if they're showing up on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right. And if they don't show up on Wednesday, my movie's done. Right. And I'm standing there having a smoke, standing over top of this canyon, just going, oh man, it's over. It's over. And I get this big hand on my shoulder that pats me on the back, and it's Ricardo, and he goes, we'll see you tomorrow. And I turn around and all the grips are shaking my hand going, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So that's why I always tell everyone, just be a decent human being. And remember that every single person on that film set, they're making your movie. And if you're really good at, I shouldn't say manipulating, but if you're really good at keeping yourself open, they're not making your movie. They're making our movie.
Yep.
Because they're all just as, they're no longer working for you. They're working with you, and you're making a movie together. And if you can get a crew to do that, I mean, doesn't matter what the critics are going to say. Doesn't matter because that shit you can't control. But if you have an army that all believes in the hill you're taking, you could do anything.
Yep. Nobody can take that away from you.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. You did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your spiciest industry take?
I think we're spending way too much time worrying about what people think. But when we were doing the short film Frostbite, initially I wrote it that it was going to be a little white kid under that mask. And one of my students had to be the body double, who was from Vietnam. And he's wearing this outfit. And as soon as we started talking about how we need to darken out the goggles so you don't see the person's face when he's wearing the mask, I immediately went, I need to cast an Asian American actor to play this part. Because if I have this Asian American kid being the body double, and then that mask comes off and it's a white boy, like I am not contributing to, I'm not listening to the fact of like, why does every character need to be this? Why does every character need to be, cis or gender, or all that stuff, right? But at the same time, I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't want someone going, well, we need to have this character. Why? Well, because this demographic, we check this box. Because internally in me, I'm like, well, go fuck yourself. I wrote it, whoever. But at the same time, so there's a dichotomy, right? So you're like, I need to listen, but I also need to be authentic and true to myself. And, and as soon as that happened, we started auditioning. And then it was like, oh, it doesn't have to be a boy. We can audition females and males, Asian Americans. That's who we're looking for, right? And there was no point in the short where we were like hanging some kind of flag somewhere of going, well, we could have only cast an Asian American to play this part. No, it doesn't matter. We could have cast anyone for this part. But Chan, my student, inspired me to go this way and really called out my own bias, right? That I look at my other movies and go, there's a lot of white people as my leads. Yeah. And I need to change that, you know?
Yeah.
And nobody called me out on it, but I called myself out on it. So to me, I think that we need to be, actors portray other characters, whether what religion, sexuality. I think that's getting a little crazy, right? Because I think that, when people are going, well, only these types of folks should be playing these parts or this or that, that's when I kind of go, well, I agree, but then I agree, but I have to disagree at the same time, depending on the actor. Because, Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot, you watch that performance and, if that movie was to be made now, someone might go, well, you really should have cast. And it's like, I understand why, but that can't be the only reason why I'm choosing this actor I'm choosing whoever's best for the job.
Yeah.
My cinematographer is Sarah D. She's amazing. The last thing Sarah ever wants to be reminded as is that she's a woman DP, right? I'm at a film party in Minnesota, and I'm talking because I just got back from Portugal, and I bring up that my cinematographer is a woman, and somebody goes, oh my God, that's so progressive of you. And I'm like, I could give two shits what's between somebody's legs. Her fucking reel was amazing. That's why I hired her. I didn't hire her because I wanted a female DP. I hired her because out of all the reels that I looked at, holy shit, this is amazing. And that's how I would like to look at things. But at the same time, I do understand that the game has been rigged for, hundreds and hundreds of years. So,
yeah. The scale has been tipped. Representation matters, but the best person for the job should win.
And the thing is that there is someone out there, and so you just have to look harder.
Yeah.
And because granted, I'm a white guy, ironically, so are you.
Same.
We've never had to sit somewhere and question if the reason we got the job was because of our gender and our race.
Yep.
Right. And that would drive, and as proud and as, stubborn as I am, if I was sitting on a set somewhere and wondering, did I only get hired because I'm a white guy? I'd be pissed.
Yeah.
I would be like, no, I got hired because I'm the right person for the job.
Yep.
I got cast in this or I got hired in this because I know what I'm doing. And they looked at 50 or 100 other people and they picked me because I'm the right one. And it's like, well, no, maybe you were the only white guy that showed up and everybody else was a different ethnicity or different, but they, so you just got lucky, right? And so I can understand the other side of that argument going, I'm not your token black guy, or I'm not your token Asian, or I'm not your this. And what I think is going to be amazing in the future, maybe 100 years from now, if this planet's still alive, is you look at all the different kids now that are Asian, Hispanic, Caucasian. Like my nephew is Chinese, Jamaican, Caucasian, right? Mm-hmm. And he's just absolutely adorable. And so is my niece. I'm actually going to see in about 2 weeks. And I look at them and I go, man, I hope to God in like 200 years, that's what everybody looks like.
I know, beautiful caramel, like,
just,
yeah.
And they're all beautiful looking.
Yep.
Because then it's like the only way that we're going to get rid of a lot of this shit is that if everyone's got skin in the game, And I even remember having a conversation with my father, when and my father's from a different generation, and talking about, like, I said, our soon to be born, his grandson, my nephew, we have no idea what little Noah's going to look like. Mm-hmm. The color of his skin is going to determine how you teach him how to drive. Because if his skin is like ours, there's a certain way of teaching him how to drive. If his skin's darker, there's going to be then there's going to be these extra steps.
Reaching into the glove box becomes it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm looking at my father, because my whole family's, we're Caucasian, we're white, we're WASPs, is going, now we got skin in the game. Yeah, no pun intended, but now we're in it because somebody in our family might be experiencing that kind of situation. And you see that more and more in society, that more and more people are starting to experience it. And the more we experience it, the more we understand it, the less afraid we are of it, and the more accepting we are. And then, so eventually in a couple 100 years, we'll be fine.
I can't wait. I do think that brings up a point to what you're talking about before, too. I think it's incumbent upon storytellers to try to bring representation into their stories, because the way you tell that story changes, right?
Totally.
So if you cast a black actor versus a white actor, when they get pulled over, right, they're going to change their performance.
Yeah.
And then everybody that's watching is going to witness that and be like, oh, okay, now I understand a little bit more.
Yeah, and you have to not be afraid to go in that direction. Perfect example, a guy gets pulled over on the side of the road, and the guy's white. And maybe in the script, in your mind's eye, he's white, right? Actor comes in, African-American actor, knocks it out of the park. Tucson. Knocks it out of the park, and you're like, holy shit. I'm just using him because I'm not. And all of a sudden, now how he's going to perform that scene is going to be different. Now, if I, as this white director, go, well, no, don't be so paranoid, or don't be so this, I'm ignoring what is real. Mm-hmm. And I'm not making, I'm not helping, I'm just turning up blind eye going, oh, well, maybe for a different movie, but not for my movie. I want us to stay, no. We have to be honest, and we have to be truthful. And so, so basically, that really helps, I think, I think the biggest thing is, especially when it comes to race, everyone keeps talking about wanting to have the conversation, right? But nobody has it. They talk about it. But no one has it, right?
Thoughts and prayers.
And you just sit there and you go, look, we all have bias. We all grew up in different parts of the country, in different parts of the world. I'm going to view cops differently than you view cops, X, Y, and Z. We need to sit down and basically go, I'm not discounting what you believe or your bias, and you can't discount mine. And we got to figure out, we got to get in the middle somewhere and figure out that we're all coming from different directions, and no one's direction is right or wrong. It's all gray. And if we approach it that way, but the problem is that everyone's so afraid to have because if I say the wrong thing, doesn't matter what side of the table you're at. It's the same thing with storytelling. If I bring out something, I'm going to get judged. And as long as you bring it out and you're honest with it, I think that's the important thing.
Yeah. Sorry that you got canceled, Andy.
Well, I mean, the reason that, like, I feel like if I'm a banging drum is that, the documentary that I'm working on is Conspiracy Theories. Mm-hmm. And when people say, "Oh, this person believes in a conspiracy theory," the word we tend to focus on is the words conspiracy theory. The word we really should be focusing on is belief, because trying to talk somebody out of conspiracy theory, I have as much luck as trying to talk a Catholic out of Catholicism, right? And so when you start seeing all the different points of view that everybody is coming in with that conspiracy theory label, all of a sudden you realize that every single one of us is guilty of it in one way, shape, or form or another.
Sure.
You know, sadly, I look at my conspiracy theory as conspiracy fact. Yours is conspiracy theory. You're crazy. I'm totally fine, right? It's one thing that I anytime that these topics come up, it's like, don't shy away from them, lean in, and try to give the best answers you can without fear that your opinion is going to get taken, and because of course it is, you know. But fuck it.
I also know you're working on a documentary. Can you tell us anything about that?
Well, the documentary is called String Theory, and it's a documentary that basically focuses on conspiracy theories. And some people will go, "Oh, cool, which one?" And our answer is all of them. And so it's like a psychological deep dive on why we as a species get caught up in conspiracy theories.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, can't wait.
I always love yeah, that's great.
On a serious note, are aliens real?
Probably not. I shouldn't. Okay, we have no evidence that proves that they are real. Mm-hmm. We have opinions and beliefs. Like one of the jokes is, yes, I believe personally, I want them to be real. Why? Because I loved E.T. and I wanted a friend like E.T. Right? And so my own bias is I want them to be real because and when I saw Richard Dreyfuss get on the spaceship and take off, that's why I want them to be real. You know,
you're a hopeful agnostic.
Exactly. You know, I want them. And at the same time, you just look at the mathematical equation and going, "There's no way that we're the only thing."
Fermi paradox. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're out there. Whether they're here.
Yeah. They might not have the technology to get here because we don't have the technology yet. You know. So I would like to believe that they do exist. The one thing that I do find that's like really interesting with conspiracy theories in general is the fact that how they're constantly influencing one another. Like one of the topics that we talk about is the fact that people that believe in 9/11, that was an inside job, and that believe this, a lot of the critics will go, well, our country would never do something like that. And in our documentary, we go back to an actual document that was finally released called Operation Northwoods, which during the Kennedy administration, the Joint Chiefs of Staff presented JFK a plan of, if we blow up a few buildings, a few planes, and a few boats, we can go to war with Cuba. And this plan became public, information in 91 or 2. So when people that are criticizing the 9/11 truthers and going, we would never do this, the 9/11 truthers go, yeah, but have you ever seen Operation Northwoods? So every single conspiracy theory that's out there, there is a 20 to 25% truth embedded in there that is inspiring something else. So, and the irony is, if you look at, they're both Democrats, Republicans,
Yep.
and you just keep going and you go, oh, this is not one side, this is both sides. And so I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail and death threats when it's done, but it'll be worth it.
Bigfoot?
Bigfoot's not a conspiracy theory.
Okay.
Bigfoot is an idea. If Bigfoot was working for the CIA, covering up like that we were contaminating the water systems in Seattle to turn the frogs gay, then we're in a conspiracy theory.
Conspiracy is the definition, people colluding.
So conspiracy theory is two people.
At least two people.
No, it can't be more. It can't be less than two. There's no conspiracies of one. So it's a conspiracy of two people or more that are hiding some piece of information that is detrimental to society. So actually, I should take that back. If Bigfoot's turning frogs gay, that's not negative. If Bigfoot is mind control water that is convincing us all to to buy a certain soda, then we're a conspiracy. I mean, the first conspiracy that we talk about in the documentary, to let people know what we're talking about, is Santa Claus. because here you're from the age of 0 to 4, your family, strangers, TV, everybody's telling you he's real. And then when you're 5, they say he's not. And then you realize that millions upon millions of people have been lying to you. And if the child psychologists are correct that from the age of 0 to 8 is when your identity is fully formed, well, then the belief of conspiracy theories is embedded right in your DNA.
We baked that baby in.
Totally right in, right? So even now you're in your 30s and you're like, or 40s, and you go, well, of course millions of people voted illegally. Well, why? Well, you have no evidence. Yeah, but I do have one thing that happened to me when I was 4 years old, where everybody was telling you Sanders.
Parents lied to me.
Yeah. And the negative, and it's like, okay, what's behavioral control? If you're not good, if you're not this, you're not getting any toys. So that's kind of what our documentary is really about, is about showing that, oh, this is something that we have had instilled in us, not just since birth, but since the evolution of our species, that, we have to distrust because that's how we've stayed alive. So, yeah.
Well, humans are interesting.
They totally are. They're the best thing to talk about.
And this was incredibly interesting.
Cool.
Thank you for being here.
Dude, thank you.
This was a blast.
Sweet.
Yeah. If people want to follow along with your stuff,
I'm not on anything anymore.
That's probably good.
Yeah, I mean, I do have an Instagram account, but I never use it. And if I do, it's about pictures of my cat, And so, but no, when things happen, we will announce more.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you.
Thanks, man.